most people are approaching never to be one of one.
I want to be accepted, but I also don't want to be like anybody else.
Finding who you are is an outright battle.
Every human being has the capacity to be one of one.
You want to become one of one because what you can bring to the world makes the world better.
Welcome back to another episode of the New Rose Podcast. It's your girl, Breezy, and I am here with Mr. Adrian Crawford. How are you doing?
I'm doing well today. I'm actually doing well.
It kind of feels like we haven't filmed a podcast in a long time.
I know. It feels like that.
I don't know if that's true.
No, I think we have. Well, we missed, was it a week or two? We were supposed to film yesterday. And also, I think it's our first time back in a minute. It's just me and you because, having the one with Mark Sayers. And so, so I think overall, but yeah, it seems like it's been like a minute, but it's all good.
Well, I'm excited for today's topic. Do you want to introduce what you would like the focal point to be today?
No, the topic today that I want to talk about, I've been thinking about this idea of becoming one of one. That is something that people say a lot in culture. Is the idea of they want to be one of one. You'll hear from, kind of musicians, and you hear that, and, artists and whoever, and they'll say, oh man, they're one of one. And I think that's a desire for people to become one of one, to be like this magnum opus, right? But I think when it's all said and done, I think the way that we approach it, most people are approaching never to be one of one. Like I think most of humanity and most of people, especially in our country, are just mass productions of other people in this, and they live under illusion of they're authentic and different, but they're just carbon copies of other people. And so I believe humans are called to be one of one. And so it's just been a thought I've had a lot.
So whenever culturally people say like, I want to be one of one, or even, a good example is that theme too. Like we're one of one. Yep. What do you think that people are meaning by that? Do you think they mean how you're defining it and then they just don't choose to live that way, or are they defining it completely different?
No, I think the idea of people being one of one, I believe inside the code of a human being, there's this intrinsic thing that we're called to be unique, be different. I just think how we approach that has been completely just messed up in our culture. And so I think when I say one of one, I think people, we're saying kind of the same thing. I just think how we get there are completely different. And I think the results are going to be completely different because I think the process just ultimately gives you to the results. And I think people's process of getting there is completely backwards and actually becoming that.
Mm-hmm. So I would consider myself to be someone who's like 50%. 50% of me is the person who's like, I'm so different. Like I'm the exception to the rule. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we giggle about, which is like giggle. You don't giggle. I giggle. You laugh. Yes. But that we laugh about, that is a little bit of a superficial example, is that there are times where we'll walk into like the office or a panel or something, and we'll be wearing the exact same thing. And we're both like, are you, like, we hate that. Like, are you joking? Yes. So there's 50% of me that's like that. And then there's another 50% of me that like, I get so frustrated whenever other people always think that they're an exception to the rule.
Yes. Yeah.
No. And they always are like, no, I'm different. Like, the classic artist personality that's like, I want everything to be different. I want everything to be unique. I don't like fit in. I don't fit into society. And so I guess, what do you think are concepts that apply to all of humanity? Mm-hmm. And then where does uniqueness exist?
See, I want to go to really and that's a great setup, because I want to get to everything, the basement of it. See, I think what you ultimately end up experiencing from people is the why behind it. See, what frustrates you is not so much because you are like when you see somebody who's very unique, one of one, that doesn't bother you. Even when they know they're unique and they're different, it's just what you ultimately feel is when people say, oh, I'm just different, I'm unique. And you're like, why? And I think that's the biggest issue. I think what's been the motivation for people being one of one is out of a deep-seated insecurity. A deep seed of wanting to be accepted, of just wanting to bring something to the world where people can cheer them on. So now it becomes, oh, I'm just unique, I'm just different. And the why is them. See, I think this is the fundamental issue, is that the why behind why people want to be one of one currently is because of just themselves, for their own whatever that is. And I'm not saying it's for them to have a bunch of followers or them to have some type of platform, whatever. For some people it's that. I think for people it's just their feeling of actually being accepted, trying to fulfill a void that's in their soul, not for the betterment of humanity. I think that's the thing. To become one of one, it should be you want to become one of one because what you can bring to the world makes the world better. And that needs to be the motivation. And so I think we have to start at the why first before we can get into that, like, okay, what things actually apply across, different things. But I think that's the main thing is the why. I think our why has been very, very a consumption, selfish culture. Now, again, when you go back when I was growing up, it was that generation, it created the culture because it was always about like individuals, like you had to fit into everybody else. And I was the first generation coming up in the 80s where MTV became a thing. Everybody, my own unique rock and roll, hip hop, all that. But what it was, everybody just wanted you to conform. And people were starting to push against that. But what that turned into, I think it was a good thing, but what it really turned into is people just doing it for their own individual sake, not for the sake of let's expand humanity, let's see evolution in humanity, let's move things forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. So why do you think that people now interpret being different as being accepted? Because I feel like I more so, when I think about the parts of me that feel different or like uniqueness that I enjoy, there's also, to me, it feels more painful than it feels like I'm being accepted. And so I think where I can go wrong, or like what I can call victim to, that I feel like you're describing too, though, is like the ego that comes with that. Like, because you feel that pain, you start to separate yourself from like society or a community, as like you are exempt from what it is that other people experience, or nobody understands you. And I can definitely fall to that pit as well. But what is happening there, because it feels like more of an ambivalence. Like there's I want to be accepted, but I also don't want to be like anybody else.
Yeah, I think this idea of when you talk about pain, because if you really think about it, what we've been told is to be authentic, right? To be one of one, to be unique and different. It's just, it's easy. Because what we'll say, oh, well, how you bring it to the world, people are going to reject you, whatever. But no, like actually finding it. We think authenticity and being one of one is like, it's at the top layer. That is where we have been taught that, and I think it's been so fundamentally wrong. I think that the idea of people, for you said, man, it's just painful. See, I think that's different. I don't think people experience that pain. I think what people are saying is that it's just whatever they feel they do. And it's like, well, society may not accept this thing, but I'm talking about the real internal pain of like trying to find what you really are. Because I don't think finding who you are is this easy journey. I think we try to approach it like a gardener, right? Like I'm just out there gardening and, oh yeah, I just see this. Oh, here's this, this fruit was planted. Oh, let me just pick that. Oh, here's this thing. Here's these flowers over here. Oh, no, I believe finding who you are, it's like a warrior. It is an outright battle. It's a war zone, because who you are and what I think is buried, because we have so many things that have buried real identity underneath, from childhood things to real pain, real events, fears, insecurity, whatever, our own lust, whatever it may be, is buried. And I think you have to approach it like a warrior, not as a gardener. And so I think that's the difference as well. I think a lot of people, they, and why you feel, because you're saying, I feel this way, you feel it because you actually do the internal thing, and you know how painful it is to find that. Most people don't go that deep. That's why we're like, oh man, I think I'm this, I think I'm that. So let me and we make it so shallow. It's like, I dress different. I'm like, okay, great. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, I dress different, or I listen to this type of music when no one else in my culture listens to this type of music, or it's all just like very shallow. It's not depth. You know what I mean? That's why when you see someone who is really different, there's like depth. That's why when we see like a Jerry Lorenzo, for example, right? We're like, there's something unique about him. There's like depth to that. And it's cost him something when you actually listen to his story. But I think that's ultimately what I feel is a little bit different than what you're saying than what I think people actually experience.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that being one of one can still be synonymous with being like average and common?
Are you asking that from like an actual like literal like, or are you saying like what society would say? Like, you know what I mean? Are you asking like,
what do you believe? Yeah, because I can describe a little bit more. So like, I think oftentimes when we think of somebody who's like one of one or unique, we think of like what we would consider the 5 talent person, like this very talented person. And it feels like when culture describes, oh, I want to be one of one, I want to be unique, they're aspirationally trying to reach that level of like talent or creativity or production. But it sounds like you're talking about something very different. Like every human being has the capacity to be one of one, but your one of one might not at surface level or to the world look like the kind of success that you think one of one should guarantee.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I appreciate the clarity. No, it's like it won't look like Da Vinci or look like LeBron James and again, I'm not saying these people from an internal, I'm just saying like from a skill talent standpoint, whatever, Kanye West, whoever you want to use, right? I think being one of one, that's what I think needs to be brought to the world. I think actually being one of one is actually what you measure that off of. You measure it off of who you actually been designed to be, not off of anybody else's measurement or what anyone else has done. Now, again, living in the West, we measure things off of people's, like, the money they make, the followers and influence and power they have. And we say, oh, they're different, they're whatever. They've influenced all these people. I think being one of one is being able to say, man, when you lay your head down at night, like, am I actually integrated? Am I really moving? And again, when I say integration, I believe that's a journey for the rest of your life. But you're like, man, no, I am moving, and I'm consciously moving into who I actually have been meant to be, who I've been designed to be, who I've been hardwired to be, regardless of what society will say and give me applause for. Somebody being one of one may be somebody's desire to be a teacher, like they have been born to teach, not just like being in a school or being whatever, but let's say they can just teach. It can be anything. They can teach you how to cook. They can teach you how to clean a car. They can teach you how to they can teach somebody math or whatever. But let's say that may be like the assignment, or that may be the thing for you. Well, what if a lot of the assignments you have, right, that you do with that, it's not very high paying? Right? What if also in being one of one also, it's not just talent either. It's not, and what I mean by that, it's not just like, because we will think one of one is the person with the most immense amount of talent. See, so now we think, okay, I got to be talented, and then I got to be so unique. I'm thinking different than anybody else in the world. No, I think it's about being one of one, who you've been designed to be. But think about like our money, our monetary system, right? Like, there's a uniqueness about like a penny, right? There's a uniqueness about a dime or a quarter, or you have a dollar bill, $100 bill, whatever. Well, each one of those things, their currency, they're one of one. They're unique to what they are, but they all have different value. And what I mean by value, what it's actually worth, the capacity of it. Does that make sense? And so I think that sometimes we confuse talent versus like being one of one. You have to have this immense. That's why when I say, oh, LeBron James, like I don't know if LeBron James is one of one. He's one of one when it comes to basketball and talent and ability. As him as a human being, do I think he's one of one? I mean, I don't know him. So I don't know if he's one of one. You know what I'm saying? He's one of one when it comes to a talent in basketball, but not like the integrated part of his whole life. I don't know him, so I can't say that. So that's why I'm very clear, like, oh no, he's one of one in basketball. There's been no one like him in basketball. But when we talk about life, is he really living that way in fullness of who he is? I don't know that.
But you believe he has the capacity to.
Yeah,
like everybody has the capacity.
I believe every human being has the capacity. And what I want to break is this idea that like being one of one means that you are known and you are famous and you are all these things, right? I mean, and again, like being one of one, I think there's a story in the Bible of this woman who's this widow, and she just shows up and Jesus is literally watching people give at like an offering. And this woman who's this widow, she doesn't have anything, and she puts a little amount. I mean, it wouldn't have moved none of the needle, anything financially. And he literally watches her. He sees all these other people going and putting stuff in. They were giving out of like their excess. She gave, like, it hurt her to give that, right? And he talks about her. Like that one right there, she's one of one. No one, again, throughout history now, people know they don't know her name, but they know her story because he talked about her, because she was unique in who she was. And again, in that society time, they thought she was just someone who probably was despised by God because of where she was at on the economic ladder, but he saw something different in her. I think results and all those things don't make you one of one. That just means you got talent, you got ability. Now, when you really begin to be one of one, I think you're transformational. That's what I think is the difference. I think when you become one-on-one, you're transformational. Now, in being transformational, that doesn't mean you're going to all these people, but it may be those 3 or 4 people around you. Maybe your children, maybe your friend group, maybe this community over here. That's when I think you become one-of-one, when you become a transformational figure, not just someone who just produces some things.
So going back to what it means to be a warrior versus a gardener, what is the war? What is the enemy? What are the things that are coming against you?
I think it's the war of your past and it's the war of your future. I think that we all have a past, and they just imagine like there are things from our past that chase us down that we never dealt with. And so to go back, a lot of times to figure out what that is and who you are and how have you been called to see and view the world, and what are your skill sets and your talents and your abilities? What are your values? All that. A lot of times you have to go back, because many times we've been shaped by events in our lives. And so now what we do out of real pain, real events, real fear, we now shape a worldview, we shape values, we shape skill sets in order to actually deal with the past. Versus saying, no, you got to deal with, okay, what did that past do in you, and undo that. So that's the battle. Because a lot of times, you know what, you got to go back to some painful parts of your life. It's a long journey. It's not easy. Sometimes it takes, like a warrior, when you're in a battle, sometimes that battle is not going to be over. Oh man, I'm going to do this in like 5 minutes and it's over. No, sometimes that takes years. You have to go back and do that. And then also, when you talk about the war for the future, is because a lot of times the war of the future, we're always going to fight fear and uncertainty. Like, it's this idea of what's going to happen, man. If I don't know this is going to happen. So now it's like you start building. Most of us build in our present, we live in our present out of the fear of our future. So we just start building our lives to protect us from whatever fears we have in the future, versus actually being in the present and realize, what if you actually had a different perspective? What if you actually knew who you were, and you knew your skill set, you knew your ability, and you built in the future with absolute belief. Like, oh, no, I know, I don't know how all these results, but I know who I am. I know this process, and whatever it is, I'm going to be good because I'm going to build this type of way. I think those are the 2 biggest battles that you face, your past and your future.
So, practical example, let's say somebody grows up poor, and one of the missions that they've set in their life is that they never want to be poor again. They never want to be without resources. And so that'd be an example of their past kind of haunting them now, and then also taking its form and taking its form in their future. So, but striving to generate wealth is a good thing. And so how does that pursuit limit their ability to discover their one of one?
Yeah, that's a great question, because it doesn't mean, because you've heard me say this before, in your greatest places of pain, many times you'll find your greatest sense of purpose, right? So using that example, someone who goes and they are, like you said, they grew up poor and they don't ever want to be that way. The thing I would say is that you have to go back and dig through that, because here's why. It's because many times what you have to do is ask yourself, even now, why are you building to have wealth? Now, a lot of times that training ground of not having could be an absolute training ground being used to develop that thing in you to actually produce wealth. And that's something that you're supposed to go do. But you have to ask yourself, man, once I get there, do I think that's going to, because here's what it is. It's about, no, I want to do this because, remember, it's not about you. A lot of times people, I want to go, like you said, I want to go produce wealth because I don't ever want to go back there. Instead of switching and being like, no. I want future generations to not have to do that. I want my kids and their kids and their kids not to have to live in that type of way, in that manner, because I saw the problems with that. I saw the abuse that happened in those places. I saw the fact of, man, at times people compromise these, whatever that is. I don't want to have them. So I feel this is why I want to do that in the future. And you have to be honest with yourself, because I think a lot of people may say that, but deep inside, they're trying to save themselves whatever past functional hell they were in. And that's when it gets off, because what you'll do, what if, you're pushing to go make wealth and income, but what you'll do is you'll go then chase money no matter what, even if it violates a value, even if it violates your skill set and your ability, right? Even if you don't find any joy in what you're doing, you're going to say, well, no, this is just part of the journey because I've got to go out here and I got to make this wealth, versus being like, no, you're driving that because you have fear that you're going to return there. That's the difference. You have to go back to see what is the driving factor. And a lot of times, in the end, that was a lot of my life. life of like, I had to go back and find the driving factor. And a lot of places that were motivating and pushing me in pain actually became a place of promise for me because I had to go do the work and be able to push forward in a different way.
I guess going more from a biblical perspective or God's perspective, which big feat to speak of, but why do you think that we were created to be one of one?
Because I believe God, in the story of the Bible, the Christian narrative, I believe the Bible says that humans were made in God's image. There's a uniqueness. God was a creator. And so with God being a creator, he stamped human beings with a difference in them. And I think that's the original intent of humans. But the original intent of humans were to be different, right? He made a man, then he made a woman, right? He had all these different types of animals, all that. And here's what happened is that what he wanted to do is to go out there and to reproduce, and they're in people's own uniques, but to go create, to go do things, to go build the world and make cool stuff like we do. But the problem becomes that with human beings is that because of what I believe the Christian narrative, the fall, sin entered the world, human beings now are just trying since that moment to just fit in, to find identity. And a lot of times we want to find that identity and we cover up. That's why in the Bible you see Genesis 3, Adam and Eve, the first act that happens after that, after they go and they eat of the fruit that they were not supposed to do. They do that, and now sin enters the world, and the first thing they do is cover up. I think humans have been doing that since the beginning of time. Since that moment, humans just cover up. We just now call cover up. We just now call it being an investment banker. We just call it now being ambitious. We just now call it following the American dream. We just now call it whatever we want. You can think of anything. Call it a Democrat, call it a Republican, call it a trad wife, call it whatever you want. We do and none of those things are bad. But if those things are being done to cover up those insecurities and that hole in your soul, that is when it gets wrong, because that will be your motivation, and your motivation will be about you. That was the original intent. God wanted people to be one of one, and for them to take their skills and ability and go add value to humanity. What started happening in Genesis 3, we started covering up to now protect ourselves. And that is the difference right now. I think a lot of people who say they're unique and they're different, they want to find it because they're really trying to cover up holes in their soul. And I think if we don't allow and help people start to do that, it'll get worse, because this is why I'm so passionate about this now, is because we will live in more and more of of just an illusion. It will be so dystopian how we will live in the future, because people will forget how to actually think deep, to go there, and we are creating technology, which I love, AI and all this stuff, but we are also creating this technology that will allow people to live in an absolute fantasy. And they will live there in a fantasy. I mean, from the way we build algorithms right now. So think about this. I'm thinking about the way we build algorithms to the way we have now such a public discourse of rage. So when you have a public discourse of rage and anxiety and all of the things that are going on, you go to black and white thinking, right? So you can't think clear. And so then on top of that, then what happens, the algorithm, all the stuff, it just pushes you in your camp more to think you're living right. So now you're not even thinking. Like you're not, I mean, there's just why we see stuff. And again, when you take a step back, there's certain things people argue about. Like you're really arguing about that? Like right now, I don't care where you sit on the political aisle. There, as we even record this, and we were talking about this morning with the staff, it was like the idea that there's going to be in November, there's going to be the end of the SNAP program, where these are where kids get fed, right? A lot of people who don't, get food, especially kids in school, like they're using it as a political football. And people are like, and there's people who literally are like, yeah, that's good. No, you know what? The Democrats need to stop doing this. And I could go on the other side, so please don't get caught into that. But it's like, if we take a step back, can we just say, like, no, kids like going hungry in the wealthiest nation as ever existed is stupid. Like, there's money there. Let's make sure these kids are fed. You know what I'm saying? Whatever. So I just think sometimes we just have come to, like, we're becoming this irrational people group, and our technology and our world's culture is building that. It is building people to live in absolutely a disillusioned world.
Well, something that it sounds like you're saying too, though, is that a role isn't what makes you one of one. Like whenever you gave the example of the investment maker, a Republican, a trad wife, like none of those things, that sounds like that's not relevant in the conversation of being one of one, because a role isn't a building block to how you become one of one.
Yeah, no, you're right about that. I think that it's an outcome, right? It's a container, it's an assignment, it's whatever. So it's not a building block to becoming that. But what we have felt and the reason why I use that is in our culture, And what we do think that it is, man, the type, why when we sit and talk to somebody, hey, so one of the first things, hey, what's your name? Oh, it's Bri. Okay. Well, what do you do? Because that's just how it is. Like, so then you're like thinking about, just think about how you've had those conversations, right? I know when I first started, like saying I was an entrepreneur, right? Like that was like in the early 2000s. That wasn't hot. Like now it's like like everybody's like, oh, that's great. In the early 2000s, entrepreneur, like, oh yeah, great. You don't have a job. You're broke, right? Like, or people who don't go to college. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, think about that when someone's like, oh, did you go to school? Like, there's that thing that probably inside of you, like, you feel a little bit of a cringe. You're like, oh, no, I want to tell them I went to college. Because why? Because people think if you didn't do that, then you're like some failure in life. We've made that to be that of significance, what the actual category, container, assignment is, versus like, no, what's underneath that. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And then again, measuring the results off of once you see what the process looks like.
Okay, so when we say one of one, what would we say are the building blocks of that? Like, what are the building blocks that someone is trying to discover to find like the uniqueness of their soul? Is it value, skill set? Like, what are those tangible things?
I think the first thing that you have to do is I think you have to go all the way to the basement, like I said earlier, and I think you have to find the why. I think you have to find, first of all, to get there, you have to find the why of what you're doing currently. And you have to see, is that why? And the one thing you have to measure, is that why protecting you from your past or your future? Is that why trying to prove somebody wrong? I mean, why are you doing what you do? Like, I mean, honestly, what's the fuel behind it? And then that's the first building block. You have to figure out what that why is. And then you have to ultimately then start to do the work of determining, changing that why. Because what fuels you matters. Because, when you're fueled from a place of, and what I mean by what fuels you, that what begins to switch, that what begins to move you forward, it's about whatever specifically it is about bettering humanity. So for me, the why. I used to just want to, I just want people to see who I was, just see me. So I used to try to fit in. So my why of fitting in was just because I wanted people to, I'm here to see me. When I switch, is like now my why is like, no, it's to unlock authenticity, not for you to see me, but it's to unlock authenticity so for others to actually, so they can be seen, so they can walk in the fullness of what they needed to, because I knew what that life was like not living integrated. Now my motivation and my mission is to go into the world and to unlock authenticity in individuals and communities. So my why now has changed about others and not myself. And here's what's been amazing. As I focus on others, the thing I so desired starts to happen. Whenever I turn back to start looking at me and it always goes sideways, because that's the big thing. So the first thing is like your why. Why do you do that? Then I think the next thing is, in building that, you have to figure out how do you actually bring that to the world. So what we say here is like you have your purpose, right? Then you actually have a process. Like, what's that process to bring that actual why to the world? And so again, and that's kind of think about, if you're in a factory, that's just kind of that's the assembly line that's actually putting those things together in that process. So for me, mine is human design. So my why is to unlock authenticity. How do I do that, right? How do I do that? It's through human design. It is helping build internal infrastructure, human operating systems for people and organizations in order for them to live out what? Authenticity. The next building block is really, I think, the products you bring to the world. That's like the way what we talk about. That's the containers. That's the assignments. That's all stuff like, okay, trad wife, that whole thing, right? So I use that. I keep bringing.
That's my product.
That's your product, being a trad wife. Great.
I'm more of a wag. Huh? I'm more of a wag.
What's a wag? I don't know what it is.
Wives and girlfriends, athletes. Like, wag is more.
Oh, okay. Wait.
Yeah. I think early 2000s, like.
Got it. I think
girl.
So. Got it. Okay. Cool. All right, got it.
I'm neither.
Neither, by
for the sake.
I mean, to be honest on the pod.
Of being one of one.
Being one of one, I know.
I am nothing and I am everything.
So I think the next thing is really the product, the assignment, all those things that you actually bring to the world now. So what does that look like? That could be that, oh man, I'm an engineer. I'm I'm in finance. I'm a teacher. I'm in product development, whatever. That could be how that plays out. Also, it could be a category, right? So for me, I don't have specific titles or jobs. It's more like, communication is one of those things, right? That's a skill. I think those things where your skills begin to play out there, right? So like my skill of being a communicator, I'm a connector. You know what I'm saying? My skill of creating. All those things is how I bring this to the world. So I think those are kind of the building blocks. You have a purpose, which is your why. I think your product, really your process is your how, and then your product is really what you actually bring to the world.
So for the person who's listening and they're like, I hear what you're saying, conceptually I understand that, I have no idea how to walk myself through that process.
Yeah. What to do?
What should they do?
Yeah, I think the first thing is this, is that I think it is always about a mentality first. I think you have to go into it with your eyes wide open to know that it's going to be incredibly painful. See, a warrior does not go into a battle and not think that they're like, they go in with the reality they could get shot. They go in there realizing, oh man, I may have to like actually perform, perform levels of maybe surgery on myself or stop massive bleeding for one of my, fellow soldiers. Like they also can go in there and they could die. Like they don't go into a battle without that. That is why when the way they train, the way they develop, when they are ready because it is life or death, right? So it's a mentality. I think that's the first thing people have to realize is that the mentality of discovering who you are is like that of a warrior. So it's going to be really painful. And I think most people, why I keep stressing that is because in a world right now to where we have access to things so fast, to where we have a society that tells you things should, it's building around our own comfort. The idea of pain to find your purpose, that seems so counterintuitive to our world. It should be easy. It should be natural. Like skills can be natural. You're like who you are is not. It's a war. So I think that's the first thing you have to go through that. So you have to just say, and again, that sounds crazy, but you have to make a decision. Are you willing to go like all the way in on this? Because it is going to be that. So what does that look like practically? Like you begin to write your story out. Are you willing to go to those pain points and those pain places of your past that have shaped you? Or when you start to do that, you're like, oh, I forgot about that moment. And it's going to make you feel some type of way. Are you willing to go through those emotional process? Are you willing to deal with maybe something you never grieved over? You know what I'm saying? Maybe you look at it, you're like, man, I never grieved over the fact that like I lost my childhood because like of the way adults functioned. So I had to be an adult way too early. That's like a thing you have to grieve about because man, you lost you lost the innocence of fully being a child. So sometimes you have to go through the process of grieving. So you may be angry, then you may come to, trying to make amends for it. And then there's you have hope for the future, whatever. And so I think that that's one of those things that you'll have to be willing to like actually do and go through the pain of that. I think the next part of it is then once you do that and once you have that mentality to want to go through that, then
you call us.
Yes, then you definitely call us, and definitely we're going to be having a product that's coming out really soon that you're going to really help you in your day-to-day life. So that's definitely something else. I also think, man, the next thing, again, just practically right now, if you're listening to this, man, I want to get started right away. I think the first thing you do, man, I think you start write your story. And here's the other thing too about being a warrior. Like I said, a battle is not won in one day. So here's what you have to do. Take your time. See, that's the other issue. Everybody wants to find, what am I called to do right now? And so like, what if I told you, what if for the next 6 months, all you do is just write your story and look for patterns, but slow down. Just every day I get up, I'm going to write. Maybe I write 10 minutes, maybe I write 20 minutes, maybe I write 30 minutes, but like write your life story out. Because here's what happens. We'll try to skip through stuff. And what you'll do, you'll skip through some things that have been really, really meaningful, to actually go through that process. And I'm just saying that is a very practical next step. You're saying start there. And honestly, don't rush through that process.
So what would you say is next? Because it seems like understating your story isn't enough to unearth the purpose for your life.
Yeah. And then I think when you start looking at that, I think what you should do is then you should start getting around asking some people, man, when I was asking a parent, if you have a relationship with your parents or a guardian, or if you have access to maybe your favorite teacher or a coach or whoever growing up, man, what did I talk about? Your sibling, what did I talk about a lot? What was I always doing? Because a lot of times those are the moments where you were free. You didn't have the pressures of society, so you would dream about all type of stuff. An example was I was teaching a class last night, and there was a young lady that was in there, and she was like, man, I was like, it was a crazy thing to want to be this as a young kid. But she's like, man, I wanted to be a psychologist, a child psychologist. And I'm like, that's a weird thing to want to be that from a young age, right? But then here's what happened. As she started getting older, people started saying, oh, yeah, child psychologists don't make that much money. So then she flipped everything. Now she wants to be a judge, right? But I was like, okay, great. There's something, but be curious about that. why did you go from a child psychologist to want to be a judge? See, like society started pushing her, you're not going to make any money, you're not going to survive. See, it's not about her being a child psychologist. It's something about the idea of justice. It's something about the idea of protecting people. It's the idea about doing right. And as I said this to her, I literally looked at her, I was like, oh, it's the reason why you do it is because probably in your greatest pain, what you want to be to the world is what actually you needed. And so now you want to bring that to the world. She looked at me like I was like some like oracle. But it's like, I think in those moments, like, so I use that to say, start asking people around you, what did I used to talk about? What did I say? You start thinking about, what did I do? Can you go back? Do you have like artifacts from your past, right? Do you have things, man, I used to collect these things to do this. Start being curious about those things, because I think when you are, they start to help. Again, I'm trying to be very practical. Start when you're right now. When you watch movies, when you see clips on YouTube or clips on Instagram, TikTok, whatever, and it's like, oh man, there's something about it. Like you really like it, you save it, right? And say it's like something that may be motivational, educational, whatever it is. It can be funny, whatever it is. Ask yourself why. Like what? Because a lot of times, we'll do that. Like we'll see. Like, I mean, we talk a lot about it, but like you'll send me a quote or you'll send me a clip, and but it's like a lot of times I tell people, ask yourself, why do you like that? Because we'll say that's really good, but it doesn't matter that that's okay. I heard this little cool quote. The question you have to ask, why is that really good for you? Because that's when you'll put it into practice. And so I think you just have to. So the main thing, start being curious about your past, start being curious about your current and your future. And I think when you do that, you'll start to self-discover more and more.
What did you want to do when you were younger?
Man, I think a few things. I mean, basketball was one of them, for sure. And I think when I look back on that, and this is actually, it'll be an interesting kind of like thing to go through. Like, I think I wanted to be the best at basketball because that's how I thought, because I didn't have this whole kind of process of why. But what I wanted to do, it was the one thing that I was good at, and that like, I could be seen for, because I didn't feel seen. So I'm like, oh, this is the one thing. So that was what motivated. I just want to be seen, right? And so that was the one thing that allowed me to be seen growing up, was actually playing basketball. I think another thing but I go into that. So you're like, so what are other things? Man, it was anything where I could use my imagination. I literally lived in my mind a lot. So like I could entertain myself all day long. So I would like literally be in the basement playing like imaginary basketball games. Like, I mean, I literally could visualize I'm out on a mini hoop in my day, and I'm playing 5-on-5, and I'm playing against the Bulls or the Lakers. I'm throwing it off the wall. I'm doing like this whole thing. I mean, that's what helped me become a really good basketball player, is that I used to just work out, and I just didn't go out there and just do drills. I actually could imagine how they would guard me. What about this? So anything around my imagination was kind of there. I love like thinking about that type of stuff. I love like thinking of mythical things. Now, again, as I got older, I stopped thinking about those things. I used to think about, man, like, I mean, how would it look if I ever got drafted? What would I do? Who would I hug first? I just lived in all of those imagination things, because I believe that it allowed me to create a future. And I'm realizing now that was something that's actually a gift, to be able to do that now and create. But again, if you ask me practically, I would say, oh, it's be in the NBA. That was it. That's what I knew. What about you? You wanted to be a marine biologist, didn't you? Or
how do you know that?
I know everything.
I wanted to be something different every year.
Yeah, but one of them was to be like
I wanted to be a dolphin trainer.
Okay.
I wanted to be a marine biologist.
Yep.
Oddly enough, at one point I wanted to be a vet. That's weird.
That is very weird for you.
Yeah. While you were talking, I was literally thinking about, why did I want to be a vet? I wanted to be a fashion designer. I wanted to be a songwriter. Like these were all different things I would do every year.
Why do you think those things were there? Do you think there's
like a common thread between them, or why did I want to?
Yeah, there's a common thread.
I think that there is a common thread in that I've always liked to figure out how things work and how to influence them and then move on. Does that make sense? I think that's still prevalent in life today. I don't know that it necessarily, I think it ties to like a broader level of purpose. I wouldn't say that is like the purpose, but I definitely think that was a common thread. And I think part of the pain aspect of it would be like, there's a control part of it. If the more that I can recognize patterns and understand patterns, like both the patterns that make something excellent, like what makes a song excellent, what makes a drawing excellent, how can I influence this like animal to do these certain things. I think the pattern recognition for me there's an aspect of control that's there too. If I can figure out what's going on, I will always be able to predict what's going to happen. Therefore, I can either prepare myself for what's going to happen or change things before they do. And I think that it's the pain aspect of it. The power in it, though, is that it really fuels like a lot of what we do, like the ability to recognize patterns within humans and how to develop good acts of behavior, good thought processes, like the human operating system. Like the only way that I can create systems that are otherwise very emotional and intuitive, like I would say that is a very strong skill set of mine, is I can take very abstract ideas and very emotional, intuitive thoughts, like the fabric of the whole of a soul of a human being, and turn it into very tangible like language and process and words. And I think that's because of the pattern recognition ability. But I don't know. What do you think?
No, I mean, I think you actually I think you're spot on with that as far as like, one, the idea of seeing the pain part and control, and then the other side of it of being able to help. I think that like the reality, I mean, I was thinking about this as you were talking. I'm like, man, I think about my imagination, and just, I would even think about when I would play like games with like my friends, or I would play like these basketball games. Like even when I would play like basketball games, even when I play like video games now, like in my mind, I'm thinking about the personalities of people. Like I'm wanting people to, like, without even thinking about it, like even these imaginary things to be one of one, to be unique, to be authentic. Oh no, this is what they do, right? That's why, I look back on why I love playing. Like I used to play Dungeons and Dragons with my friends, right? And so when I would do that, why did I like that? It's because like, man, you were on this quest with a group. Everyone, you built a team, and everyone had their uniqueness of what they brought to the table. That is why when I played basketball, like my favorite team I ever played on playing basketball was my senior year of my high school. It was because everyone knew who they were. Our coach was very clear in defining that, and everyone accepted that role. And that's why we were really, really good. And it was like everybody was able to like flourish in actually the stuff that they did. And so anyway, that being said, I just think it's always just been there, and being able to see that, and just the passion to see people become that. Like when I watch sports and I watch games and I see someone not like I was saying this last night. Here's another one I was saying last night. I was like, man, learning how to train people during basketball. My biggest passion wasn't about basketball. It was about helping people accept who they were, and then developing skill sets around that. And it didn't have to be me who taught them those things. I didn't care. I'm like, I wasn't the greatest shooting coach, but I knew somebody who was. Coach Barry, who is a part of our group. Coach Barry is one of the best when it comes to certain finishes. So I would put them with Coach Barry because I'm like, dude, he's way better than me at that. I just knew who they should be, and then I have the relationships to connect them to build the stuff around them to become that. And so that was the whole thing for me, and that's kind of how I was as a player. So I think a lot of those things like speak to. So I tell athletes all the time, like, what do you like about your sport? Former athletes, what did you miss about? What were things when you were playing? Because I think a lot of that could speak to. It wasn't so much about the game; it was about what was a part of that game as well.
Yeah, I'd say too. I think if I were to look at like a common thread, I feel like things either fell into the bucket of imagination or it fell into the bucket of risk.
Yeah.
Like for a period of time, I really wanted to be a stunt double. Like dream was to be a stunt double. And so I think that would be an aspect of the category of risk, and like riding would be the aspect of creativity. Yeah. And I think I can definitely see now where like if there's not an aspect of imagination, there's not an aspect of risk, I'm not doing it. Yeah. I'm like, man, I'm uninterested. Yeah.
Because ultimately you don't feel alive when you do it. Okay. That makes sense. Hey guys, I hope today was helpful for you. This is going to be something that off and on we're going to be talking about. It's something that I'm really passionate about, this idea in our culture of becoming one of one. And here's my challenge to you. More than anything else, what I want you to hear is that I believe that human beings are called to be one of one. But here's what you have to understand. It's not for yourself. It's for the betterment of humanity. You need to be who you've been designed to be because humanity needs that. There are people within your communities and your families, people within the vortex in your reach, in your world, that actually need you to be you so that they can flourish. Some people are needing you to use that gift that you have to really be okay with being that teacher because they need to learn. There's a kid that's right now in a third grade class waiting for that one teacher to have hope to teach them, help them understand concepts. You being one of one will actually help unlock something there. And we could go on and on. So I want to challenge you simply as being one of one is not for you, but being one of one is for the betterment of humanity. Until next time, keep writing the rules.